he's wearing. Like, How about you?
I liked it. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I was thinking, why am I liking it more? Because I remember being bored with the endless search for Sophia and also the lack of zombies when we first watched it. Because I think I was evaluating it, at least in part, as an ongoing horror movie.
Hmm.
And now I think I like it more just because I care about the characters a lot more now.
Yeah.
I've come to know them, and I it's interesting to see the seeds of what will happen and the early versions of these characters, knowing how they've evolved and everything. So I think
Yeah.
really just having seen the whole series is having me appreciate this season more.
I think so. They lay a lot of the groundwork in season two
Mm-hmm.
that pays off in seasons to come. And I think that's giving me, in the same way, a deeper appreciation of it looking at it now.
And if I'm not like sitting there expecting or hoping for some scary zombie stuff, but rather just like seeing characters that I like and
Hmm.
enjoying seeing them together, that's the
Yeah.
difference.
And enjoying stuff like having Shane around because
Yeah.
he's a dick, but he's great to watch. And there's so much to him and to his performance that I think you they really it was a loss when John Bernthal left the show, I think, because he was
Yeah,
such a good actor and
absolutely.
added so much to it. Yeah, in this season in particular, his trajectory is really complex.
And I feel like he's so real. Like
Yeah.
I can understand him because I don't know, I feel like we all have these things about ourselves that we know. Sometimes I get upset about whatever and I just go too far, and then I have a chance to think about it and realize, "Oh my god, I did it again." He's like
Yeah.
that but with some really bad
Yeah.
bad
With
impulses.
yeah. And it's funny knowing the spanner that's about to get thrown in the works from the end of this episode of like Laurie's pregnant. Like that's a game changer. Like we were
Yeah.
watching maybe it was the we were talking about when she throws up the pills in the next episode and Peter's like she's essentially consigning herself to death and I'm like yeah and I think she kind of knows it. Like I think like yeah, there's a lot to talk about with Laurie and the pregnancy, but you know,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a bigger decision than just having an unwanted pregnancy in the
Yeah.
apocalypse. It's about like, can you survive it, knowing that the only other child you've had was born by C-section. It's yeah, it's so layered. It's just yeah, and knowing what happens, knowing both that we get Judith and what happens to Laurie, this whole episode just becomes more, I don't know, rich for it, knowing that that's what's lying ahead.
For a second, I was thinking, did Maggie and Glenn risk that kind of pregnancy? But no, he had those condoms right there, and I'm sure he
Famously not.
used he used it. I mean, that his little faux pas actually turned out to be a stroke of luck.
Yeah, I was gonna say we don't move on to the biz quick for another few seasons, so we'll
That's
just
right.
leave that one there.
Oh man. All right, so let's get into our points. Do you mind if I go first this week?
Absolutely not. Go for it.
Okay. My first point is hope. This
Mm.
episode's a lot about hope with Carl stable. The focus now shifts to searching for Sophia. And by the way, Maggie busts out her topographical map, and it just shows that, wow, I thought of her as this kind of pleasant, gentle farmer's daughter that evolved into this really capable leader. But she was, from day one, just capable
Hmm.
as hell with her bat. I had totally forgotten about that. Anyway,
She's a woman who knows a map.
so there's a whole bunch of expressions of hope and optimism in this episode about finding Sophia. The title of the episode, Cherokee Rose, is about hope. And all of
Mhm.
this, of course, we know ends up being false hope. But Walking Dead spends so much time on it in the episodes leading up to the infamous barn scene. And I think that's one reason why that was so shocking and so iconic for the show, because it was unexpected. And I've heard more than one person say that scene is really what hooked them into the show. That's when I
Mm.
like, oh my God, the show. But as far as expressions of hope, Dale and T Dog are hopeful. They're saying, well, T Dog says, "Hey man, you think there's a snowball's chance we'll actually find the little girl?" And Dale says, "For the first time in my life, I'm betting on the snowball." And he goes, "Yeah, me too."
Mm.
So you're hearing all of that, and it's like, with any other show, it would be leading up to finding this girl, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy thinking about how much they put into that now, given what happened. They go back to the highway to see if she showed up, and there's the supplies with the sign that Daryl had mentioned. Sophia's to here. We will come every day. So that's showing that they still have hope that she's there. The story of the Cherokee Rose, Daryl says it's about American soldiers. They were moving Indians off their land on the Trail of Tears, and the Cherokee mothers were grieving and crying because they were losing their little ones along the way from exposure and disease and starvation. And a lot of them just disappeared. So the elders said a prayer, asked for a sign to uplift the mother spirits and give them strength and hope. And then this rose started to grow right where the mother's tears fell. And then he says, I'm not fool enough to think there's any flowers blooming for my brother, but I believe this one bloomed for your little girl. She's really going to like it in here.
Oh, that whole interaction, man.
Yeah.
Am I becoming a Daryl fan? I don't know. I think I might be. It's lovely.
I thought it was so cheesy when I first watched this, but now it's the start of this deep friendship that goes on to this day and culminates in a spin-off series.
And culminates in Paris, baby.
and it's really nice. It shows that he has this good heart and cares, and it also is interesting. It ties him maybe to indigenous people, living off the land. Like there's a spirit connection there, I feel like.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, honestly, is it a hopeful story? Because the Cherokee children didn't come back to life and the moms just got roses.
Yeah. I have like a whole point about the Cherokee Rose.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm holding my water, but
okay.
yeah, I hear you.
I just had one more thing. So then Carl at the end, Rick's with him by his bedside, and Carl says, do you think we'll find Sophia? And Rick goes, I know we will. Well, I don't know, but I truly believe it. And
I mean, they do.
They do find her, but I don't think that's
live.
what he meant.
No,
I'm not sure. So on any other show, all this hope would lead to a positive outcome, but the message is this is a darker show, and that's the message we're going to get in a few episodes here. And another aspect is darker too. Like right now, things seem pretty idyllic with the Greens. They're just this helpful, graceful family, and little do we know that they also have a dark secret. It's not.
Yeah.
So it's not right now. I think the show feels I was getting a bit impatient with how it felt a little boring because it's all nicey nice, but it's going to take a turn.
Yeah. No, I think so. I like thinking of the Greens as graceful. I was admiring it was essentially silly, but their whole aesthetic at the Green Farm, it's like this out of time idyllic place, and Herschel, when he and Rick are out looking at the horizon in his like, I don't know, Southern gentleman outfit with his like straw hat and his like white suit, I was just like, I love this. It's like,
it's very pleasant.
Yeah, it's a very pleasant vision of an older way of life that Rick's group essentially fuck up massively by the end of this.
Of course.
No. Well, yes, and the herd, but also
that's true. Yeah, I mean, really, it isn't necessarily his fault, except as we learn that if Rick shows up, something bad's going to happen, whether it's his fault or not. It's going to happen.
It just is.
Yeah.
The man's a portent of doom. Like,
That's
he's
right.
beautiful, but he's a portent,
just
man.
Turn him away.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned the Cherokee Rose, because I know that we've had some back and forth with people about the fact that we've been talking about issues to do with racism on the show, and how looking at it from the lens of it being 2023-24 has made us think differently or look at things differently. But I actually think this scene puts Daryl in a really sympathetic light for knowing the story of the Cherokee Rose. I went off and looked it up because I was interested by it and I didn't know an awful lot about it. So for those of you who don't know, the Trail of Tears refers to it's a route that was taken through America, through the States in the period 1830 to 1850, which was a period of ethnic cleansing and forced displacement of Indigenous Native American people. Approximately 60,000 people were displaced during this time, and they came primarily from what were called the five civilized tribes. So those were primarily Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw nations. So they were removed from their homelands in the southeastern US to west of the Mississippi because of the Indian Removal Act, which was passed in 1830. This Removal Act authorized the Indian title to land claims to be completely extinguished in the southeast, so it allowed settlers to remove Indigenous people from their lands. Now, Darrell talks about the Cherokee children passing away and their mothers crying for them, and this obviously did happen. So the largest death toll during the Trail of Tears comes post 1838. The last forced removal in 1838 was related to Georgia and the gold rush there. So it's a very strong tie to the Georgia area. At this point, the Cherokee were rounded up into larger groups of up to 700 people. And so communicable diseases were rife. There was exposure, violence, and a lack of supplies because it had all been plundered for the gold rush. So people were dying in droves. And I think this is probably the point where the Cherokee Rose comes to be part of the mythology. It's obviously a really horrific part of history, and many countries across the world are culpable of things like that. But I think the Trail of Tears in particular is a particularly brutal one. I think it's really nice for the story to give Darrell that bit of exposition and not have him, I don't know, frame it in any kind of pro America way. He just tells the story as it is. He just talks about what happened to the women and their children. And as you say, it kind of ties Darrell into this more, I don't know, free way of living, this more way of living that's more in tune with the land.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like he's making a big political point, but
no,
you
he's
can
not
feel
at all.
that he has sympathy.
Yeah.
He has sympathy for them.
He doesn't tell it as like this awesome thing that happened or anything. But
right.
he recognizes that it's a sad thing.
Right. But he's not using it necessarily to make a point about putting down what early Americans did, although
No.
I don't like that. I don't like what they did. But I'm just saying that's not his point in telling it. But
it's not at all.
There's a sympathy, and when I say he shares with them, like he's also not only do they live off the land, but also having gone through a lot of trauma, I feel like he has a connection with them there too.
And I just think I'm like, who told him that story? That's really interesting that he knows that.
Maybe it was his grandpa that was on D-Day. Wait, I don't think he knew him, did he? No. Yeah,
not until he saw the flashback in Paris. Definitely wasn't Merle. Merle's version of the story would be very different, I'm sure. Yeah. Maybe his mom. Right. You never find out much about Mum Dixon. Interestingly, the rose itself, because I'm also quite interested in plants because, I don't know, I had COVID and I had nothing better to do than look up ecology. The plants are actually an invasive species that come from China or Taiwan or further south, like towards Laos and Cambodia. And they came to America roughly in the 1780s. It's the flower of Georgia. So it's the state flower. And they believe, I think, that the white petals are the tears, and the center of the flower, which is yellow gold, symbolizes the gold that was taken from the indigenous people and the gold rush that caused that particular part of it. And that was something I didn't know about Georgia, that was the state flower. And I just think something about that story that Darrell tells Carol is just right for that moment. It's not a story that, like you say, it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending. Because it doesn't, because they've still lost their children, but it's about beauty growing from that pain. I don't know.
The point for him was this Cherokee Rose is a sign that she's still out there, because right after he says that, he's like, she's going to really like it in here, meaning I think in the RV. But if you really pay attention to the story, that's not what it means. It just means having strength and hope post trauma, after this happened. And so I don't know if he's not really understanding his own story, but he's got a point there. Like, she will have strength after she finds out what really happened.
It's the right story for that moment, and it clearly means a lot to Carol.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that he's offering some sympathy and encouragement, optimism for her. That's what he means to be doing, and it's really sweet.
And I just think in like the evolution of Daryl, and kind of a reminder to me as well. Like, just because he says a few racist things doesn't mean that that's all he is or all he ever will be, or all he'll ever think. He's clearly capable of empathy and thinking differently about things, and we see that time and time again in the show and how he responds to different people in different situations. And I
For
just thought it
sure.
was nice to have that moment early on to
Hmm.
really kind of, and it's, I think I remember being surprised by it the first time I watched the show because Daryl had been so gruff and feral up to
Yeah.
that point, and this is the first time he really does something that's just sweet and kind. You know,
Hmm.
looking for Sophia is kind, but he's doing it with, Daryl aggression and Daryl annoyance at other people and things like that. But this is just a very vulnerable moment for both of them, and I don't know, I liked it. I didn't like what I learned, but I'm glad that I learned it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's in part why I was critical of it to start. That it was the first time he did something quite so overtly sensitive. He'd already shown that he cared about finding Sophia, and Rick has brought him in to be more of a part of the group and gave him the duty, responsibilities and stuff. But this really was a new side of Daryl that we hadn't seen before, and I thought, I always feel like I like it when shows show flawed characters and that not everyone has to be redeemed in some storybook kind of
Yeah.
a way, because life is full of people who are many different shades of morals and things like that, and attitudes and likableness. And I want to see all of that, all of humanity, not just the people that we can completely root for. And I
Mhm.
do think that part of the reason why Daryl evolved the way he did is because Norman Reedus wanted to play a cool character.
Yeah.
I think he said that in interviews. I argued against Daryl being too racist, um
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, if I just need to accept that for what it is. Like, this is not the story of an inherently and irredeemably racist guy like he came off at
Yeah.
first. It's the story of a guy who had potential to grow and then did grow. And that's okay
Yeah.
too. Like, there are people like that. And now that I've had a chance to spend years with Daryl and appreciate him more, especially in more recent years, than coming back to this, I see him in a whole new light. So I am still a
Yeah.
little bit critical of that sort of ego of the actor who just wants their character to be cool kind of thing, but I have to put that aside and appreciate it for what it is.
And I think with Daryl, they steered it in a way that didn't stretch the bounds of believability
Yeah,
and
I
didn't
agree. Yeah.
it didn't ask us to forgive the unforgivable, whereas other characters who we won't go into talking about just yet because
Yeah.
we've got 5 more seasons without them. Um,
And I don't think Daryl did anything unforgivable, in my opinion.
no,
I don't see
no.
anything he did that was
Whereas when
unforgivable.
an actor or fan response is driving a character from being a shit into being a lovable rogue when the story hasn't allowed for that, that's a different kettle of
We'll get
fish.
to
Do you know what I
that.
mean? Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get. So yeah, that was my point about the Cherokee Rose.
I like it. One
Yeah.
thing you mentioned, looking at issues of racism from a 2023 lens and having some
Mm,
listeners push back against that.
mm.
I do see it somewhat that way, but I don't even think we need the 2023 lens. I think
No.
the intent of the writers clearly was to talk about race in some of these early episodes just by what they're having the characters say. Having Daryl speak in stereotypes like that is about race, and then having him sort of overcome that. And what T-Dog
Even
said, but
Herschel, the Asian
Herschel.
boy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's not so.
Sure.
I don't see anything wrong with that. But having Herschel, T Dog, what he said last week, at the roadside, and this episode says, "I don't know why I said that. That's not me." And we're thinking, yeah, but we don't blame you for having some of
Yeah.
those feelings come out. But I just think whatever your opinions are about the things that are being said, they're there. And so
Hmm.
when listeners mention something to me, I really try to think about it and think if they have a point. In this case, I just suspect that because in our culture right now, there's a lot of criticism that some people see a lot of racism when it's not there, or they're making mountains out of molehills or whatever, that's just like a knee-jerk response. Oh, they're talking about racism. They're doing that same thing that all these people do in society all the time. I don't agree. I think in this case with The Walking Dead, what they're having the characters say, it's just another theme in the show, and that's what we do. We talk about the themes of the show. So that's it. that's
also I welcome that kind of discussion and pushback from listeners in a way, because it gives us a chance to have these kind of conversations.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, I'm not saying
Thank you for saying that.
Oh my God, if you think we're being racist, here's why we're not, and here's why we're. I'm just like, yeah, I think it's a valid point, because it's probably not something that has come up as much before, and it's cool to chat a bit about it. And
right. And I hope, like, the fact that I don't agree with some of you guys on that doesn't mean you don't like me anymore and you don't want to listen to the podcast. I mean, we're not just constantly talking about that. We have been bringing it up a lot more lately, though, because I feel like it's in these first 2 seasons, but I think it's becoming less and less.
I think it goes away. I think by seasons 3 and 4, it really is just the living and the dead. I don't think there's room for.
We'll see. Yeah, I think
we'll see. But yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to look at the rest of the series from a view of critical race theory. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what we should do.
Let's do it. Let's go on NPR. Let's aim big.
Okay. My turn?
Yeah, go for it.
Maybe I should do another Daryl point, since we were just talking about Daryl. This is kind of about Daryl, his status as being in the group, but kind of being a loner too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, he's going off to look for Sophia, and Rick says, "You okay on your own?" And he goes, "I'm better on my own," which that so resonates with him throughout his history. I mean, the very last shot we see on The Walking Dead is him going off on his motorcycle.
Yeah.
But he is a part of the Commonwealth. He's just taken on this duty to go off and explore and find information about other people. And I think that fits with his character, where he wants to belong, but he needs his alone time, basically.
Yeah.
And at the start here, I think it was more about him either not being sure he belongs, or the others not being sure he belongs. Like Rick said to the Vatos, he's one of ours, more or less. Just sort of a little bit of a dig there. And here, there's a feeling that Rick doesn't consider him totally a part of the group. Again, he says, "Hey, we got a base. We can get this search properly organized now." Daryl says, "You got a point, or are we just chatting?" And he goes, "My point is, it lets you off the hook. You don't owe us anything." And Daryl says, "My other plans fell through." And I'm not exactly sure what Rick is telling Daryl. It sounds like, "You don't need to help us. We have it covered." And I think that hurts Daryl. And I think Daryl's like, "Dude, I'm with you guys, but it sounds like you're saying you don't need me and maybe don't want me." But I think Rick is actually saying, "I feel like you don't really want to be with us, and I'm letting you go." And it feels like a couple who doesn't have good communication skills, and they just need to sit down and talk it through,
What I'm hearing is,
you don't want me. No, what?
What I'm saying is, we want you very much.
But it did feel like Rick was blowing him off a little bit. But I feel like Rick just thought maybe he didn't want to be involved, but which is kind of dumb, because he's clearly been very invested in searching for Sophia.
I mean, he's like 100% forgotten about his brother from like a week ago, so like I think he's fine.
Even though I think the Cherokee Rose was actually blooming for Merle, because he's coming back.
I mean, Merle was such a stand-up guy. Yeah. What a loss.
So that's all I have to say about him.
Amazing. Is that full on point? Do you want me to move on to my next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I just really belittled you. I'm like, is that a point? Is that your point? Yeah, okay. I will talk about, I think maybe our first iconic, no, not our first iconic zombie, because we have Bicycle Girl, but Well Zombie. Hello. I'd forgotten how disgusting this dude was.
Very.
Just horrible. I don't really know what to add. Like, disgusting, bloated zombie.
Yeah.
One of my favorite memories when I was watching this is when this show came out around about 2011, this season, I was still tutoring English to kids as a private tutor, and there was this one kid he was great actually. I hope he's doing really well now. but we were talking about a poem that had a well in it. And he didn't know what a well was. And I was like, a well. And I was trying really hard to describe it. And he went, oh, like in The Walking Dead with that amazing zombie. And I was like, yeah. So we sat and talked about The Walking Dead for 10 minutes. I was like, yeah, it was a really gross zombie. So that was a nice memory when watching this. But it's just so gross. And it's just such a classic, like, zombie conundrum. You can't shoot it because it'll infect the water.
I don't know if I'd want to be drinking that water anyway, to be
I
honest.
know. Well, that's the thing. Peter and I were sitting there, and we're like, would you drink that? And I'm like, no. Would you? And it's like, no. So anyway.
Yeah, that's why it's a bit dumb. And they come off kind of incompetent, tying him to this pole that just falls over.
And
That's
Maggie
why
looks horrified, and I'm like, yeah, don't blame me, sweetheart. It's pretty gross.
it's
Like
just
everything about this is grim.
it's another case of needing to come up with believable danger, but then because zombies are slow and stupid, that they have to almost make the people seem stupid too, you
Yeah.
know, and they're lowering this poor guy down, and then the thing breaks, and then you got like 4 people and they're struggling to pull him up, which was a little bit hard to believe. So it's a bit like Keystone Cops or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and he still manages to loop the rope around the zombie. I'm like, sure, I would probably just be like literally shitting my pants and crying. So, like, well done, Glenn, for managing that.
Yeah, I mean, that was a testament to his character. Like
Yeah.
they said, oh, we're going to have to try something else or something. And he goes, says you. I thought that was cool. He was proud of himself. And I think maybe one of the reasons
Yeah.
why he agreed to do that was to show off for Maggie. So he's showing off a little bit.
And in the end, it kind of shows something different because Maggie gets annoyed that he doesn't value himself enough, which I think is
Right.
really sweet. There's some funny lines in this whole thing with the
Is that
Zed
next
being
week, by the way? I don't remember
yes,
hearing her say that. Okay.
I think
Yeah.
so. It's
Cool.
next week, yeah. They talk about the Zed being in there long enough to grow gills. I did like Laurie's line about the dead didn't come back to life to start raiding our cupboards. Glenn complimenting Shane on his haircut as he's getting lowered down. You know, he's like, I really like your haircut. You have a nice shaped head, which I just thought was very funny. Maggie saying you people are crazy because she's not wrong. And then at the end, T-Dog saying, good thing we didn't shoot it. Which I was like, T-Dog sass. I like it because he was not wrong. That probably would have been the sensible thing to do. I also don't understand why they didn't just get Glenn to like knife it in the head and then anyway. So there were a million other ways they could have done that.
Well, yeah, maybe it would leak out, but yeah, I guess you're right. But this is another, just a smaller scale little piece of hopes being shattered, you know?
Yeah.
That's what this show's is. Hope, putting people through hell all the time.
Every
Nothing
bit.
works out.
That aerial shot of the body splitting in two,
That was
everyone
the best.
being pretty grossed out, Maggie being absolutely horrified because we don't know at this point, but what we'll find out is she's never killed a walker.
And her brother and mother, zombie mother and brother are in the barn, and she's hopeful that they can be cured. So anytime one of these guys gets killed, I think to them, it's almost like little Lizzie, how she feels about it, you know?
And you see that moment as well. I totally missed this the first time I watched it with Maggie and Herschel, where they're round the map. And I think Shane quite rightly asks, we've got to talk about what happens if we find Sophia and she's turned. And the group kind of concedes, well, we deal with it, we put her down. And you see Maggie and Herschel look at each other.
Yeah.
And now we know it's because that's
right when Herschel decided you guys can't stay here.
Yep. And later on, Herschel talks about there being reasons that he doesn't want them there, that he doesn't want to go into. And I'm like, yeah, like
he's like, you gotta follow my secret rules that I can't tell you what they are, but promise you will.
And Rick's like, I love your secret rules, Herschel.
Sure.
Follow all of your
it's
rules.
Okay, we'll come around back. I'm just gonna hog tie you up here. No, I don't know.
Yeah,
well, I'm trying to think of some secret rules.
Yeah.
You said you
on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Spaghetti Tuesday on a Wednesday. Deal with it. Yeah, so my point was just Walker. Nice to see him again. Not really nice to see him again. Could have lived without seeing him again, but there he was.
I am impressed with how the walkers look. I for some reason in my head I had it that they just kept looking better and better as the series went along, but these are all great, and I especially love how these early walkers have a little bit more of their humanity in them. Not so much this one though. This was a full-on monster, but it was still pretty well done.
It's like, oh, it was
Like,
well done, well
you know, get
rendered.
it? But when, I talk about Greg Nicotero being such a horror effects geek, and just you can feel the joy in it, and that was maybe misplaced with, I would say definitely with Glenn's death, where you see the eyeball
Mm,
popping out, and I can almost see Greg being like, that looks so good, not
yeah.
really fully getting how it's going to crush a lot of people's spirits. But in this case, with this one, at least for me, I'm like, yeah.
It feels like they used to do kind of a proper sort of zombie of the week situation and like a featured Zed,
Yeah.
and this was
Oh yeah.
it set the
This is the
bar
only
pretty
one.
high.
So
Yeah, it's the only one in this episode, so yeah, it set the bar pretty high.
so it's all bloated, and it got me thinking back over the course of the series how we've seen Zet walkers, zombies in water. I looked it up in season 4, episode 7, Dead Weight. The governor kills one of his allies, Pete, and throws his weighted corpse into a lake. And later, Pete is seen there in the lake, but he wasn't
Mm.
bloated. He wasn't bloated. In season 5, episode 2, Strangers, Father Gabriel takes Rick and others to this to scavenge for supplies in this overrun food bank, and there's walkers that have fallen into a flooded basement. They weren't
And Bob
bloated.
gets bit.
Yeah, I think.
Oh,
Did he get bitten? Yeah, I think that's
yeah.
right. Yeah. I don't think they were bloated. In season 7, episode 8, Heart Still Beating, Rick and Aaron retrieve supplies from an abandoned houseboat floating in the middle of a walker infested river. I don't think those were bloated. I mean, maybe when we get there, they'll be all bloated and I'll be like, oh, I didn't remember that. But
Yeah, but you don't know what this guy ate. He might have had like a whole heap of like beer and pizza.
yeah, I think
He
he
might
was
just be
already
bloated.
bloated. Yeah, before. That's like Maggie's uncle, Bert.
He had gluten intolerance. Like he ate a whole bunch of wheat and then fell down a well. It was not
Yeah,
good.
that's canon now. That's what we're gonna say.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, my whole thing about this scene is it just seems goofy. It's
Mhm.
it's well done as far as the look of the zombie, but it seems like I don't think this is a good idea, you guys, and you fucked it up.
Yeah, you
So
fucked it up. You fucked up.
you done fucked up. But I want to
Amazing.
go on to a full point about Herschel and Maggie's perspective, which you
Mm.
kind of alluded to. So first off, we see Daryl, Andrea, Dale, and Carol arrive with their, caravan, motorcycle, Hyundai looking shiny, and RV.
Mhm.
And I, I just had this feeling like from the Greens' perspective, like, okay, more strangers are showing up. How many are there? How do you have more people coming? And I can imagine how that might feel kind of intrusive.
Especially when they've just lost Otis as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
And I think Herschel is a good man, and he can tell that they're good people, and I think he would be open to letting them stay, if not for his zombie wife and son and other relatives in the barn.
Yes.
You mentioned, Shane said, what will happen? We got to figure out what happens if we find Sophia and she's bitten. And without hesitation, Rick says, you do what has to be done. And I think it's notable he's clear-eyed about that. And he
Mhm.
actually ends up being the one to do that. Shane hesitates, if I remember right. But
Yeah.
yeah, Herschel and Maggie clearly don't agree. And then when Rick suggests our people will set up close to the barn, Herschel's like, no, why don't you stay closer to the house?
I'll
That
just
was
miss
funny.
you if you're down there.
Yeah,
You can
right. Yeah,
stay
you don't want to go
close.
down there. That's a stinky
Don't
old
go down
barn.
there. It's not
Um,
good.
and then when Shane wants to train everyone to use guns, which I think is smart, Herschel's saying he'd prefer them not carrying guns on his property, which I felt like, hey, it's the zombie apocalypse. Maybe that's not smart, but I think it's because he doesn't want to risk that they'll shoot his zombie relatives in the barn. I think that's the main reason why.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
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 When T-Dog bashes that Zed's head in, Maggie's horrified. Then Herschel tells Rick, once you find Sophia and your son's okay for travel, you guys need to move on. I think
Mhm.
the main reason he's saying that is because of all the stuff I just mentioned, especially Rick
Mhm.
saying if Sophia's bitten, we'll have to shoot her. Then later Rick comes back and asks if, come on, can't we stay? And he says he'll consider letting them stay if they respect his rules, which he can't discuss. Secret rules.
You can be in my club if you follow my secret rules. Okay.
Right. And I kind of wonder what people who were not following the comic, if they were picking up on all this, because I already knew there were zombies in the barn. So it seems like some people would at least suspect something like that was going on, right?
There's some ominous barn framing, like the way it's framed
Yeah.
in shots or in the background. So I'm like, yeah, I can't remember if I knew or not. I genuinely,
Yeah.
knowing me, I probably read somewhere that that was what happened. But
If any
yeah,
listeners remember, if you didn't read the comic and you came to this episode, were you like, what's going on with this family? Or were you picking up on all this, what they were putting down? Let me know. Let us know.
I could kind of buy that, like, Herschel's a bit of a gentleman who wouldn't want the guns on the farm. But I
Yeah,
remember
me
that
too.
that's
Mhm.
different from the comic for sure. Herschel in the comics is fine with weaponry on the farm.
That he wouldn't want guns, and even just that he would feel like, all right, like there's too many of you and I'm not comfortable with this. That makes sense,
Mhm.
you know, that there didn't have to be any other reason for it, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe everybody was just like, what's going on with this guy? I was also kind of wondering why Rick is so sure that there's no hope if you're bitten, but Herschel and Maggie aren't, because they've all clearly seen some bad things. Herschel's family was attacked by Zeds, but I wonder if it's Herschel's faith that might be the difference, or maybe part of it is just that Rick met with Jenner, you know, CDC scientist, who had been looking for a cure, but had lost all hope to the point where he just thought we should all kill ourselves. So one guy who maybe could have found a cure had given up hope. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know.
He'd opted out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting one. Is it faith versus science?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
I don't
Because
know.
there is that talk too with Herschel preaching to Rick, and he's saying, like, your son got shot, but you made it okay, and you found your family, you made it okay. Doesn't that say something to you? And my thought is, what about the billions of people who just died horrible deaths? Like, if you're saying that God had something to do with Rick and his son making it through, then what does that say about all those innocent men, women, and children who just lost their lives?
Well, that's kind of like what Maggie said last week, isn't it? There must have been a whole lot of prayers that went unanswered.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation between Rick and Herschel. The one
It
about
is.
God and faith, and Rick coming out quite staunchly as someone who's lost his faith or didn't really have much to begin with.
He tested it out a little bit, and now he's like, yeah, last time I talked to God, my son got shot, or whatever he said.
I mean, he did get quite the ominous sign. You know,
Right.
it was not great. It's an interesting dynamic in their relationship, I think.
Rick and Herschel.
Rick and Herschel for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have a point that carries on from that, because I was thinking a lot about children and parents in The Walking Dead generally, but specifically in this season. And I think Rick and Herschel's conversation about fathers and sons is super informative about both of their characters. Although I wish we knew a bit about Rick's dad. I realize that we don't really get a sense of Rick's family much at all. I think he tells a story about his grandfather and We Are Not the Walking Dead. But Herschel says that his father was a mean drunk, that he didn't go to his deathbed and he doesn't regret it.
I'd totally forgotten that.
Absolutely fair fucks to Herschel on that one. Yeah, and he says something that I wish I'd written down the exact quote, but it's something that
Some men do not earn the love of their sons. I don't see you having that problem.
Yeah, that's it. Because I'm very much of the belief that, like, just because you're blood related to somebody doesn't mean that you owe them shit if they're not going to treat you right. And that Herschel and Rick relate to one another through their roles as fathers, but also I really feel that Herschel becomes a father to Rick. Like, I think that is the relationship they have, is father-son relationship.
It was great because it was in that moment where Herschel was turning Rick down, basically, and Rick came back and asked, hey, can you give me a second thought or second chance. And then Herschel just tuned into the problem. I mean, Rick was sort of wearing it on his sleeve. I don't want to fail my son. I lied to
Yeah.
him earlier. But Herschel just went right into like, yeah, father mode or counselor mode or
Yeah.
something. Really sweet.
And I loved the exchange where he says, you're putting me on the spot here, and Rick says, I mean to. Like, I like that. It was very
Yeah.
respectful, but it
Mhm.
was forceful in the right kind of way.
Assertive, not aggressive.
Yeah, assertive. And they Rick does so much diplomacy with Herschel in this season in a way. And that I think is the difference perhaps between Rick and Shane's leadership styles is Rick will do soft diplomacy things. At this stage, anyway, by the time we get to
Yeah.
Alexandria, like who
Waving
fucking knows?
his gun
But,
around.
yeah, in Alexandria,
That's what came
he's
into my
like,
mind.
he's like, and Michonne's like, well, just knock him out, it'll be fine. At this stage in the game, in this
Right.
stage of his development, he's still doing the soft diplomacy and trying to play by the rules, and he
Yeah.
realizes that what's
You
going
know,
to win
when
Herschel
Michonne
over.
knocked him out, that's right when
Yeah.
he knew he found the right woman for him.
Yeah, it's like, that's my girl. Laurie would have just sulked in the RV. But you see, it's a strength, I think, and Herschel respects that, whereas Shane is clearly doing more decisive actions in terms of killing Otis and getting Carl the medication and the supplies that he needed. But he finds it harder to abide by rules than Rick. Although he is in this episode, presumably out of guilt for Otis, is trying a bit harder than he maybe does in later episodes because Andrea comes up to kind of try and I don't know, suck up to Shane, like, give up our guns. And Shane's just like, we just got to respect it. We just got to respect it.
That moment, I was like, Andrea, I was a little annoyed. Like, yeah, Shane's got a point. You are their guests. Like, they've made this request.
Yeah.
But then I thought about it a little bit more. I'm like, well, yeah, but Andrea didn't really get the choice. Like, the men decided, okay, we're going to go along with what our hosts have requested, and you have no choice. And she's just sick of that. And I don't blame her for that.
Yeah, that would be super frustrating. So I like it. I like watching the dynamic with Rick and Herschel develop. I like the mutual respect they have, but also the way they push each other a little. Herschel pushes Rick to consider open-mindedness to faith more. Rick pushes Herschel to face reality a little bit more, but also to give him guidance in. And you see this a lot, I think, in season 4 at the prison, when Herschel's kind of my favorite version of Herschel, which is the sort of chilled out Herschel who's got a little ponytail and only one leg, and sort of he's all about just love thy neighbor. I find this Herschel harder to warm to, I have to say. I don't love him at this point, but I think what they're bringing together and the tension and the respect there is really powerful to watch.
I like him now, but I think I like him even more later. But we've been watching the bad lip reading Walking Dead, the one with
so
Carl
cute.
Papa.
Oh, Carl Papa.
And Rick, and I mean, Herschel's like, Carl's like, do you want to hold my stick or something like that? And
yeah,
Herschel's like, no. I forget what he said, but then he just goes, later, Tater, and turns and walks off.
Tater.
But my son Bodie, he's wants to hear that Carl song over and over again. Jiggy jar jar doo.
It's so good.
So you guys haven't seen that? You should watch it. We used to play it. It's bad lip reading, so they take scenes from different things, in this case The Walking Dead, and just make up what it seems like they're saying, and sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. It's really, really funny, and it's on YouTube, and we used to play it in between
I remember
in between panels at the Walker Stalker, and Chandler Riggs loved it. In fact, I found a Chandler Riggs reacting to that, so you can go on YouTube and see him watching it.
It's the best one. They do the Twilight one is quite good as well, but Carl Papa is the best one, I think, because the song actually is a bop. Like it's actually quite
because the guy
catchy.
who makes these, I think he's some famous song producer, but he hasn't revealed his name because he doesn't want to mess with his brand by saying he does this goofy stuff too, or something. Oh my God,
it's Jay-Z. It's Jay-Z, isn't it?
But I think the way that Herschel really influenced Rick here was he gave him a pep talk about his father, his
Hmm.
abilities as a father, saying, "Hey, my father was shit basically, but you're doing great."
Yeah.
And Rick had been saying, I feel bad about having lied to Carl. So after Herschel gave him this pep talk, he goes right over to Carl, apologizes about lying that Sophie is okay, which I thought was really, really nice. And then
Hmm.
there's a sweet moment where Carl says, "Hey, we're the same. We both got shot." And that's when Rick gives him the iconic sheriff's hat that Carl
Hmm.
wears for years and then gets passed on to Judith.
Hmm.
And that, I mean, just thinking about the hat objects are so important to this show. Rick's Colt Python and Sheriff's hat, Daryl's crossbow and angel wing vest, Michonne's katana, on and on and on. Mostly weapons, but a lot of other things too. And then this kind of confused me. Like Rick puts away his badge and uniform, and
It did.
Lori's like, "Are you putting that away?" And I thought it maybe had something to do with him saying to Herschel, "These people look to me for answers. I wish they didn't, but they do." But I'm like, you're
Hmm.
the one who keeps making decisions and insisting on doing it, going to the CDC, doing it your way. And I don't think he stopped doing that after this. So I was like, what
No.
does this signify? Nothing.
He's
You're tired of
his
wearing
own
it.
worst enemy. I mean, it signifies that he's maybe a bit too comfortable in Herschel's house because I don't think he's sleeping in that room. Like Patricia's going to be
Right.
like looking for something and be like, "What the
Why
hell is
is this
this?
in here? Damn it.
Why the fuck is that in here?" Like, yeah, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Um, moody. I'm going to go for moody symbolism of I don't know, being a dad, not a cop.
I think he is sort of feeling like I had been saying in the episodes leading up to this, it's about his doubt in his decision making ability and whether he's doing the right thing. And even when he's talking to Herschel, he's sort of saying that. So he has this instinct to give it up, but he's at war with himself. Maybe that's what I'm going to say, where
Yeah.
he's like unsure, but he just can't help himself.
And that's like Rick to a T, isn't it? Like that's what we
Yeah,
see in future seasons is he can't not do it, but he
yeah,
doesn't always want to do it and he doesn't always feel comfortable doing it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
I still love him as a character. He's still my favorite. Um, and I just speaking of parenthood, so yeah, Lori realizes she's pregnant. She takes the pregnancy
Mhm.
test, and I think at this point, probably the first question everyone has is, "I wonder if that was Shane or Rick's." Right, when you're watching.
For it to have shown up on the test, it would need to be Shane's because Rick's only been there a week.
Hmm.
It'd be
But
really quick,
it couldn't
you
have
know.
been before. Like, how far are we after Rick went to a coma?
At least 2 months.
And so that she'd be too far along at that point.
I think so. And it didn't seem like they were super close before he got shot.
Right. Totally. And I think, I mean, it, it, Rick thinks it's Shane's. He says so in season 8. And even Andrew Lincoln thinks that too. He said in an
Yeah.
interview, Rick is not Judith's father, but he's her dad. So
Yeah.
I think we're as sure as we can be that it's Shane's, but I think maybe there could be a chance. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Like,
I
what
don't think
if,
it's cut and shut, but I do think it's very unlikely to be
yeah,
Rick.
yeah. I mean, what if they're one of those couples that just keeps on having sex even when they're fighting and they slept together the night before Rick got shot? Maybe, but probably not.
Maybe. The other thing that gives me pause is that they only have one kid already, and that kid is like 7 or 8 at this point, and I'm like,
Mm,
were they having for like I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
you can have just one kid. I'm an only child. We are great, but yeah, part of me is like, are signs pointing to this?
Yeah. And in the wiki, it says, not that the wiki's 100%, but it does list Shane as her father and Rick as her adoptive father. So I
Yeah.
think
I
that's what everyone
think
pretty much thinks.
I think in The Walking Dead, if you kill the parent, you have to become the parent. I think that's the rule of adoption: is if you kill
Makes
the
sense.
dad, you then have to be the dad. Those are the rules. I
Only on
don't
The
make
Walking
them.
Dead.
I just enforce them.
All right. I want to talk about Glenn and Maggie and how Glenn is
Yeah.
treated and portrayed. I love this Glenn. He comes off so funny and endearing. He seems out of his depth and bewildered, mostly about social things, but he's
Hmm.
always good natured and capable. Um, like it's funny. Maggie recruited him to go to the pharmacy, and she's all right, I'll go saddle your horse then. And she takes off, and he turns to Dale, horse? Like, I'm going to
Hey,
have to ride
I
a
think
horse?
I think Rick's playing matchmaker. Rick's the one who says
He
to
suggested
Maggie,
it.
he's our go-to-town expert, which is an
Yeah.
innuendo if ever I heard one.
I
And
don't
then
think he
Maggie
meant it
tells,
that way.
I think he was I think he was setting them up. I don't think he meant go to town as in go to town. I think he knew what he was doing. I
Okay,
think he was
I
doing
don't
Glenn a
think so. I
favor.
think Rick's too got his mind on too many other things for that.
I
But
don't know.
maybe
I think
I
it's his
think
wee
he just
buddy
knows that Glenn
Glenn.
used
I
to
think
go
he's like,
into Atlanta a lot. But
mhm.
then Glenn is looking through his binoculars and seeing Maggie riding up on her horse, and he goes, "Hello, farmer's daughter." And then Lori comes into view like the Tusken Raider in Star Wars on Tatooine in front of Luke, you know.
Ultimate buzzkill. I need you to give me a pregnancy test. Like, oh god.
Yeah. And then on the way to the pharmacy, Glenn's like, normally this is the kind of thing I do on my own, solo. It's sort of my thing, I'm a loner. And the tone sounds like he's trying to impress her, which I think he is, but also he's telling the truth. If you think about it, he used to go into Atlanta on his own.
Yeah, he
And
did.
then in the pharmacy, that whole thing where he's trying to hide the pregnancy test, and she's like, "What you got there?" And he grabbed the nearest box, which turns out to be condoms.
Yeah.
You got a girlfriend I don't know about? No. Then you're a pretty confident guy. No, 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 no.
I would never have
Is
sex.
something wrong with me? I would never have sex. And so it's so funny. Even when he gives Lori the pregnancy test, he's like, here, and he looks bewildered and beleaguered and doesn't say anything. And so I love all this. In our interview with Stephen Yun back in the day, it was clear he didn't like the idea of being comic relief, of Glenn being comic relief. And I'm pretty sure Stephen Yun influenced how Glenn was portrayed as the series went along. Basically, he's a boy who we see become a man, I would say, or a young man become a man. And I miss this endearingly goofy Glenn, but I also get where Stephen Yun is coming from. Like, we love Glenn, but also I don't think he gets full respect from the other characters.
No.
I mean, it's sort of fair. He is young and inexperienced, but we get to see him grow into a man and, a respectable person who's serious. And now, though, because he's clearly a capable person, but just because he has this nature where he seems a little bit shaken and comes off that way, people treat him worse than he deserves, I think. Most notably that they volunteer him for dangerous things.
Yeah.
Like when Andrea says, they're standing around trying to figure out how to get this bloated zombie out of the well. And she goes, "We need live bait," and looks right at Glenn. And it's kind of funny, but it's also very rude. Like,
yeah,
this is his life you're talking about here. Do we really need it that bad?
She wouldn't have done that to Amy.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so all that is in the background. And then when Rick suggests Maggie take Glenn on the supply run, and Maggie goes, I hear you're fast on your feet and know how to get in and out. She knows what she's saying. I don't think Rick did. Maybe I'm wrong, but she knows what she's saying here.
Rick didn't know that he was doing an innuendo, but I think he knew. I think he was doing Glenn a solid, putting him with the pretty farmers.
All right, we'll have to agree.
We'll
have to agree to disagree on that.
Because I think he's also hinting at Shane about Andrea in this.
Oh, really?
Well, this. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of like. I mean, he's got motivation to get Shane away from his wife, I guess.
What did he say?
I think it's in the next episode. I don't think it's in
this one. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay, maybe. So anyway, Maggie's clearly being provocative. You're fast on your feet, know how to get in and out, knowing it'll throw him off balance. I think she knows already that she's most likely going to proposition him, maybe. And so when she says, "I'll have sex with you," I remember feeling like that felt so out of the blue, and it felt like it was put in just because that happened in the comics. On rewatch, it makes a little more sense because now I see that she was into him from the first moment she saw him, I think. And I still think maybe that's out of character for Maggie. I don't judge it. I just it doesn't seem like the Maggie we know would do. But then again, we haven't seen her meet a lot of guys, and maybe she's just like that. Some people surprise you, you know. Maybe she's just
She's
forward.
what is it? She says you're not the only one that's lonely.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
he never said he was lonely, but she could tell. And I think that's cool. They could read each other. And I
yeah,
also think Walking Dead totally snuck a sexy farmer's daughter storyline in there right out of erotica.
yeah. Glenn knew. Glenn was like, hell
Yeah.
yeah.
And when she said that, personally, I might be a little put off by that. Like, I'll have sex with you. I'm like, we don't even know each other. But maybe if I was Glenn's age, maybe not.
And
But
also,
then
like, they might be dead tomorrow.
that's true. Good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll change your behavior. So that's a very good point. Then Glenn and Maggie are riding up on their horse afterwards. He's smiling and about to say something, and she says, "Don't spoil it," which I
Yeah.
thought was hilarious. And he goes, "So it was good," and she goes, "It's a one-time thing," which I think means it could mean a few different things, but that she was lonely and attracted to Glenn, so she went for it. But she does want to get to know him. I still think she thinks there's possibilities there, but she doesn't want him to take it for granted, think that she's a given. If anything's going to
Yeah.
happen, it does have to develop. It's not just a given that, okay, we had sex now, so we're together, you know? And it's a challenge to him too. Like, if you're really into me, you're going to have to try. But,
Yeah.
but if I were him, I would also have it in my head that I'm not a given either. Let's see how this goes, you know?
But you know who could tell straight away? Fucking Herschel.
Oh yeah.
Herschel's like, and she's like, nothing happened. And Herschel's like, mm-hmm. And I'm like,
Oh, it's like Herschel's like this again every week
yeah,
with you.
Dad radar. He's like, Maggie's been doing that again.
Maybe so.
Oh, funny. I prefer show Maggie to comic Maggie. Comic Maggie is a bit more
I love them both.
erratic. I like them both. I especially like. I actually think I like where comic Maggie ends up more
Yeah,
because of
me
where the
too.
story takes her.
Mhm.
But at this stage in the story, they definitely soften Maggie a lot for the
Yeah.
show.
And that's one reason why that didn't make as much sense, what she
Yeah,
said.
that I think
Because
you're
she's
right
a
when you
little
say
bit
that.
more like a goth girl or something in the comic, like a
In the
little.
comic, she's more like Beth in some ways. Like Beth kind of dallies a bit with more sort of teenage emotions in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
wanting to self-harm and
Right.
being quite having quite bad mental health in a lot of ways. Understatement of the year for anyone in The Walking Dead. Which is much more Maggie's storyline in the comics, whereas the Maggie that we see in the show is pretty stable. Like she
Well
wobbles, but
adjusted. Yeah.
yeah, no more or less than kind of anyone else in that sense. So yeah, I do agree with you that it does seem a bit out of character for the Maggie we know here. But when Glenn says, you know, I was thinking I would be dead tomorrow, I am like, oh yeah, no, you would do stuff differently if you really thought your life was on the line and you had just
Totally.
been dropped down a well like a canned ham.
That's right. Yeah. I can't disagree with that. Good point.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I loved seeing them together. I don't think Rick was like, these guys are totally